What is development aid and what's happening to it? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Hi, my name is Melissa Siegel. I'm a professor of migration studies, and this is a channel about all things migration. One of the things we often talk about is the link between migration and development, and sometimes we also see that development aid is also linked with migration in different ways. So today we're actually going to talk about the development aid side of things. It's been in the news a lot. It's been up for policy discussion and policy debate recently. So let's talk about what's going on there. Now, development funding plays a crucial role in addressing global challenges from poverty reduction to sustainable development. Over decades, the field has undergone significant transformations, influenced by, of course, geopolitical shifts, emerging donors, and different evolving priorities. Now, what is it though? So what exactly is development aid or development funding? So it generally refers to a financial resource provided by governments or international organizations or NGOs or other entities to support economic, social, environmental development in generally developing countries. So the goal is more or less to reduce poverty, improve living standards, promote sustainable development, and address issues like health or education or infrastructure or governance in many of these countries that have deficits in these areas. Now, let me give you a little bit of context and history on development and development aid. So a key actor when we talk about development funding is the Development Assistance Committee, which is more commonly known as DAC. They have basically historically shaped global aid and the global aid landscape. So it was established in a sort of post-World War II era by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or maybe better known as the OECD. So the DAC initially focused on standardizing aid metrics, particularly for official development assistance, and promoting aid effectiveness, particularly in kind of less developed countries. But now over time, it's played an important role in the adoption of the Millennium Development Goals, and then also in the Sustainable Development Goals, and also, monitoring these and measuring progress. There's also been a rise of kind of non-typical DAC donors, right? So countries that were not, a part of the OECD or previously a part of the DAC system. And these are countries like China or India or Brazil or Saudi Arabia, who we have seen also stepping into this development financing and development funding area. You can see here in this graph a lot of the different development donors and actors, which ones are part of the OECD, which ones aren't, which are giving more money, which are actually growing more in the amount of money that they give. So you can see, for example, that the United States, at least historically, by far was the largest donor, but you also see that Germany is also a very large donor and has also been increasing its contributions over time until very recently. But you also see China here developing as a key player in the development assistance arena. So another change that we've started to see over time is that development assistance is not just coming from governments and countries, but we're also seeing this development assistance come from private actors and from NGOs and other ways of giving money. So we have seen a number of different kinds of trends over time. So besides starting to see this more diversification and not just our traditional players in this arena, we're also seeing very clearly a rise in geopolitical influence and how development financing is being used. We've really seen a rise in earmarked contributions while we see a declining in core multilateral contributions. So what does that mean? We're starting to see more and more money that is earmarked for very specific purposes, whether or not that's for a specific disaster or maybe, a specific country or specific geopolitical issue. And that is definitely a trend that we've seen over time. So the current landscape is really seeing how geopolitical dynamics are reshaping development funding. So DAC donors are increasingly tying aid to national interests, emphasizing economic self-interest, security concerns, and geopolitical strategies. That is definitely something that we see. And for instance, prior to the Trump administration in the United States right now, the US generally positioned its aid as a counterbalance to China's growing influence. And American aid often came with it maybe specific norms and values and ideas also around democracy and rule of law and other things like that, that we really saw kind of Western agendas being pushed. Now, with this earmarking of funding, another trend that we have really started to see is the prioritization of humanitarian aid and paying for in-donor refugee costs. So what does that mean? It means that countries can basically claim or say that they're giving development aid when they're really just paying to host asylum seekers and refugees in their own countries. So for example, if Germany or the Netherlands are hosting a large number of refugees and asylum seekers, they can actually count that first year of hosting these people in Germany or in the Netherlands in their development assistance numbers, which seems perhaps a bit counterintuitive. Now, I know a lot of times people don't completely know what is in the development aid or development assistance funding and how that is calculated, but we are seeing that countries are more and more spending that own quote-unquote development aid money in their own countries instead of actually in those less developed countries where we would normally expect it to be. And the issue with that is that it means that there's actually less money to go towards long-term development assistance, or there's less money that goes into more long-term thinking and trying to create that growth and development in countries that need it most. And you can see how this trend has really played out, particularly from the early 2000s. You see a lot of this in-donor refugee costs really going up in our graphs here. So you can see how the composition is starting to change over time. Now, what are the current big issues? What we have really seen, particularly now in 2025, is a complete shift and change in the landscape of development aid. And what does that mean? We are seeing huge and unprecedented cuts to development aid. Official development assistance is facing a historic contraction or cost in 2025. According to the most recent data, 17 of the largest donors within the OECD Development Assistance Committee, or the DAC Committee, provided almost $200 billion in ODA in 2024. And that was already a decline from 2023. And what we're seeing is that projections for 2025 indicate that this figure is going to fall dramatically. Now, this actually represents the largest projected annual drop in recent history, with the United States and Germany accounting for the most significant costs. But also France, the United Kingdom, and several other donors are also expected to reduce their ODA budgets due to fiscal tightening, lower economic growth, and lower in-donor refugee costs. And that is really important, and particularly with the changes that we've seen in the United States now with the dismantling of USAID and the huge cuts that have been made to development assistance from the US. This is going to take a major toll on development programming around the world. The United States was by far the largest single country donor, and they have now cut the ODA budgets significantly, and this is going to have huge ripple effects on many of the poorest countries in the world. In 2025, President Trump suspended all US foreign aid pending review, and by March of 2025, 83% of USAID programs had been terminated, which resulted in an estimated $60 billion funding gap that neither the EU nor other donors were in the position to fill at this time, given the commitments that they have already made. So this is really detrimental. And of course, we are seeing cuts to poverty reduction programs, to feeding programs. The World Food Program is in a huge deficit at the moment. The UN Refugee Agency is also having to make a large amount of cuts. The International Organization for Migration has had to reduce a huge number of staff and reduce a large number of really important programs that we see that were going on around the world. But some of the biggest hits have really been in the areas of health, particularly also public health and hunger and feeding programs, also for children. So unfortunately, we're probably likely to see a lot more starvation, and we're likely to see a lot more global health issues also in the future because of these cuts. Now, I hope that just gave you a quick overview of what development assistance is, what development aid is, some trends that we've started to see happening over time, and what the current situation is. Now, keep a lookout for other videos that will be coming up in the future where I do more to link development aid funding to migration issues. If you have yourself been involved in any of these programs, if you've been affected by any of these cuts, please also comment down below. Let us know how things are going and what the situation is for you. If you found this video useful, of course, please do share it around. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the videos that we upload on a regular basis on this channel. And I do hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.